I love anything that makes me feel like I'm putting, like,
a sense of expression.
Yeah, my sense of expression into it, right? So that's why I paint, I draw, like I do anything that has to, like I made bracelets growing up, like anything that has to do with like me putting el toquecito mío, right? Like the little thing that I like.
The Spanish.
She was hiding that. She was hiding that.
my little,
popper.
my little like flavor to it, you know. That
Okay.
Who is this?
Y'all already know who it is. It's just a regular podcast.
They call me Ram. Look, I'm in this shit with my brothers. All that we got is each other. Ain't focused on being the same. Living life, don't complain. Can't nobody say that they made us. Yeah, we was down, nobody saved us. Thank God we never gave up. Yeah. Damn. They still throwing dirt up on my name.
Okay.
I just want the money, fuck the fame.
Fuck the fame.
They think this shit is a game. If I lose, I only got myself to blame. Damn, hey. They still throwing dirt up on my name. Hey. I just want the money, fuck the fame. They think this shit is a game. Yeah. If I lose, I only got myself to.
Ooh.
Hey, yo, that boy working.
Is he done? I don't even think he done.
He working that OT.
You done, Ram?
that's the new intro, or that's the intro to the.
That's
It's
the intro
always a
for
new
this
intro.
one. This got you jumping though, right? Let's go. Brother Rem. Who are them?
Yet another one, yet another fire intro by Brother Ram. Shout out Brother Ram real quick. Dad duties deluxe, you heard? Full of diapers. We're going to hold it down, though, man. He'll be back soon.
That's that working behind the scenes though.
That is that working behind the
Keep
scenes.
going, don't stop, brother. We're rooting for you.
Ever. We magical. Woo. Y'all already know who it is. AOC laughing loudly. And to the left of me, the right of y'all, we got a very, 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 very special guest today. Introduce yourself. To the left of me, the right of y'all, we got
Daniella V
Ooh,
on
yeah.
Instagram, Daystar_, and then also D Fitness Way.
Shout out Daniella V.
Yes, sir.
We'll put all of that down in the description below. Before we get to know her, to the right of me, the left of y'all, we got
Hey, yo, NF de este lado y entregado como siempre, mi gente. Hoy vamos a lo que vinimos.
Vamos a lo que vinimos. And before we say anything a little bit too incriminating, we got the
Lawyer!
Any wild ish gonna get a
Whoa!
let's start the show. How you feeling, Daniela?
I'm feeling good. I'm excited. It's my first podcast.
Oh, shout her out
Yeah.
first
Let's
podcast
go.
ever. Let's go.
So I'm excited. I'm interested and intrigued on like what tonight's gonna be about.
It's gonna be about you. It'll be about you, about us, but primarily you. So, with that, who are you?
I feel like that's a loaded question for me. It's like nah. I'm a Zumba instructor. I'm also right now. I'm currently working for, and I'm teaching at 2 gyms right now. I've started my own class. It's called Rhythm and Tone. It's a little separation from Zumba. I've been teaching Zumba for like 6 years. I want to say like on and off.
That's fire.
So now Rhythm and Tone is like my own take on Zumba. So it's a little bit structured differently. It just turned 1, so I started at Peach House.
Shout you out.
Shout out to Steph, Peach House Fitness. I started it at Peach House a year ago. And right now it's at Nonstop Fitness as well. Shout out to Nonstop Fitness. And yeah, so right now I'm a dancer, I'm a writer, I'm a creator, I'm a dreamer. There's a lot. I think it's interesting when people ask me like, who am I? Because sometimes I don't know how to answer that question, But yeah, so I'm currently working on that. Currently trying to go back into teaching. I fell off from teaching Zumba for a little while because I was trying to prioritize my own class and see where I was going to fit in like the dance fitness realm. Also this year, I started my organization called Revive and Thrive Collective, which is basically centered around bringing awareness to mental health, especially for inner city children, just inner city communities in general, and also bring the conversation to Black and Brown communities, because I feel like we're one of the ones that's the most underrepresented, I guess you could say. There's like not a lot of providers that look like us, but there's also not a lot of conversation that surrounds like what mental health looks like and the issues when it comes to our communities. So I hosted my first mental health retreat back in June actually, sorry. It was June 11th. And the turnout was amazing, probably a lot better than I ever thought it was going to be. There was a lot of planning behind it. Everything fell through. And yeah, so like right now I'm dipping and dabbing into everything that I feel like does make me, right? Like I said,
Right.
like I'm a dancer. I love to write. A lot of people don't know that I write. So it's just a little bit of everything that I guess I'm starting to figure out who I am, if that makes sense.
You were not kidding about doing a lot of things
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a
Oh.
lot.
You're magical. I want to. That's powerful. You do a lot, and all of the things you named, I think are very important.
Yeah, I guess, when you ask questions like that, like who you are, right?
Yeah.
For a big part of your life, you're answering that question based off of like merits and like things that you accomplish, right? Like, oh, I'm a
Yeah.
college grad, like or the position that you have at work, right? Like I'm
Right.
VP of marketing or, things like that. So
Yeah.
I think in the last few years, I've realized that when answering that question, I didn't want to answer it where I'm highlighting like what I do as a career or like
Yeah.
my position at work or things like that. I really started to ask myself like, who am I? So I think this is a perfect timing, right? Because I'm actually still figuring that out myself. So a better answer to that question is I don't really know yet, like
That's
I'm
fire.
I'm
Still
still
fire,
figuring it
yeah.
out, like I think there's a lot of things that make me,
Yeah.
right? And so each and every one of them, I guess I'm like spending time with them, seeing how much I take on, right? Because I've like you said, like I've done a lot, right? I've mentioned a lot of different things,
Yeah.
and when I start something or when I'm into something, a hobby, a career, or a job, I should say, or anything like that, I'm like super invested. So I kind of make that thing my personality. So when I'm done with it, it's kind of like, okay, well, I did that already. So kind of on to the next. And then you're kind of left with like, I've done that, I've done that, I've done that. And I take a little bit of everything and I, take it with me to the next one. But there's still not like a defining thing or like factor or title that I can use to define who I am, right? So I
Right.
think after turning 28, I realized like, all right, this is now time for you to figure out who you are. Because I spent so much time answering that question, like thinking about the answer too much, I guess, right? Like,
Well, which one of all of those things have you been doing the longest? Let me ask you that.
um, dancing, I think as a
Dancing?
whole. As a Zumba instructor, as like a trained instructor, I've only been doing it for 6 years, right? As a Zumba instructor. But I've been a dancer since I was 2 years old,
Your entire life.
my entire life.
So that's definitely part of
That's
your,
that's if yeah, that's me.
that's your core.
Yeah, like there's no Daniela without dancing.
Have you also been writing your entire life?
I started writing when I was 7.
Oh, that's
I started
so
writing when I was
fire.
That's
7,
fire.
and well, no one knew. Now everyone knows. But
Oh, they're gonna find
yeah,
out
they're
after
gonna
this.
find out. But yeah, I've been writing since I was 7, and it's like a handful of people who know, like the extent of like my writing, my poetry, and things like that. I don't really share it with a lot of people. One day I will, when the time comes,
Yeah.
and I start to navigate that avenue. But as of right now, yeah, like no one really knows. I don't put so much time into it. I wish I would have the same way I would have done with dancing. But even with dancing, like I stopped training as a dancer about like 11 years old. 11 or 12, I think, when it was that, like, the last time I was a part of an actual dance company. After that, everything has been self-taught. Like, I've taught myself how to do a lot of different rhythms. I've also gone deeper and, like, studied, like, the origins of music,
That's fire.
the connections of, you know, different rhythms and things like that. So I kind of take it a step further for myself. Dancing for me was like the one thing that connected me to everybody. You know, so whenever I learn a new rhythm or a new dance move, like whether that's in like soca or whether it's like dembow, you know, like dembow recently has been off the charts.
Yeah.
So especially with the new dancing and stuff like that. So as I go and I learn different dances, when I see people of that culture dance and, you know, get down to the music and stuff like that, and I, you know, like I did this in my room, right? Like, should I be bold enough to kind of dance along with them? And when I go ahead and I do that, they're so surprised, you know, and then now we're talking for hours, and now they're like, how, like, are you from? And I'm like, nah.
I'm just nice like that.
Where are
I'm
you?
just,
Don't mind me asking.
I'm Colombian. So I was born here in the
okay.
States, but my parents are Colombian.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Well, Colombia has a strong dancing culture also. Like they're very musically in tune.
Yes.
Strong salsa dancers, right?
Very strong salsa
So that's
dancers,
probably
yeah.
all in your
You
blood.
better.
Yeah, I think, and also I grew up in a family that always had parties.
That was my
You
next
know.
question.
Yeah, I grew up in a family that always had parties. I grew up in a family that they were all also dancers. You know, my parents taught me very young. And yeah, like even like my best friend's family, like her family, there were musicians in her family. They were also a family with a lot of dancers. So
my
like
God,
I've
that's so
always just
dope.
been around people who dance
And music.
and music.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
those two things are like everything. I think if I would have like came out with a better voice, a better singing voice, I would have probably gotten into music too, you know?
I actually don't think it's coming out with because you can train your voice to do that.
True.
And with the amount of things you've told us that you do here, I think if that was yet another thing that you put your head to,
Yeah.
you would crush that too.
I don't know. We'll see.
You already write. So once you
Yeah.
put your writing into your voice and put them together,
I'll see. Who knows? Maybe I'll like write for other people.
oh,
that-
fire.
And see how that works out.
So now with the writing, is it more of a deep self-reflect on a specific daily basis or maybe experiences?
It's definitely deep stuff. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of deep stuff. Writing is like how I'm able to make sense of things. Because it's the one thing where, like, if I put all of my feelings on that piece of paper and walk away from it and then come back to it, when I reread it, I'm like, oh, okay, so this was irrational. This makes sense. This, you can tell, like, is coming from some sort of trauma. This right here is just like you wasn't feeling good that day. You
It
know,
helps you
so
pick it apart better, understand.
exactly, yeah. And I think what happened is that I just went from just writing down my feelings, and then it slowly started to shift into a more like poetic version of my feelings, you know, like taking classes in college and things like that. I started making it like, okay, well, maybe I can actually do something with what I'm writing.
Yeah.
Like now it's just not just my feelings on pieces of paper, you know.
Well, don't say just because your feelings are important.
True. Yeah.
But I get what you mean.
They make you, and that's good because you're getting clarity from whatever it is that you're feeling, so you're able to learn from it.
Yeah.
And you're also developing that skill of writing, which is very, very important.
Yeah, and sometimes it was maybe a little too deep, you know. So that's why I guess you never think that you can translate it into music, because sometimes you're like, this is like a lot, you know. Like, how do you really put this into a song? Or do you really? I don't know. It was always just this thing where it was just safe for me to put it on paper, and I think that's why I always didn't like have people like look at it or tell people.
That's what it did for you.
Yeah.
Therefore, you didn't need for other people to look at it because it was
Exactly.
for you to make sense of it.
Yeah,
That makes sense. Did it give you? Did dancing? I'm trying to see if there's a correlation. Did dancing, was that also, let's say, I don't want to say an escape, but well, you said it. It was a way to connect between you and your peers, but dancing was more of a happy, or is more of a happy
Yeah.
state of mind while you're doing it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was like it was medicine.
Yeah.
You know, it was my medicine. I like, let's say I would go from putting my feelings on paper and like getting it all out, and then dancing was just me just finishing off that bit, like shaking everything off, you
That's
know.
fire.
Especially because for some rhythms and for some dance movements, you have to have like that energy and that passion, and you have to be angry. Like some songs and some movement requires you to have,
put some
you
oomph
know,
behind it.
exactly. So yeah, there was a lot of connection. Those three things, like writing, music, and dancing, was always like connected because it was always connected to my feelings. Like it was just how I was able to express myself and like make sense of whatever it was that I had going on in my mind.
That's fire.
Super fire, bro. That's amazing. And this is something that you haven't even like gave it focus. It just happens for you. So it's like natural. You're doing this out of just like habit. So it's like, this is what I do.
Yep. And it's funny that you say that. It's like I haven't even really put in the necessary time into it for me to really see like the full potential.
Do you see the value of it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Even actually, I was just having this conversation the other day. I haven't really danced in a long time, right? So I chose to have a break off class for the month of August to try to kind of get back to like myself, because work was becoming really overwhelming. And I realized like that whole month, like I didn't dance at all. And you know, like sometimes people go out to the clubs and to lounges and stuff to listen to music, to catch a vibe. But for me, like going out was to dance. Like I go out to dance. Like I don't go out for nothing else. I don't care about nothing else. I go out to dance. So when I wasn't doing that and I wasn't teaching class and like I didn't have, you know, back when I lived with my mom, I would just have a mirror in my room and it was wood floors. So I like move everything out the way and I just be dancing in front of the mirror. And I don't have that, you know, now I live on my own, so I don't have that same like setup.
Yeah.
So, you know, you kind of get laxed and you're just like, oh, I have so much going on right now, so I'm not gonna like do too much. I'm just gonna relax. But then I had like to quickly switch that because I'm just like, damn, like I miss dancing. Like this is me. Like this is what makes me happy. And I, for a little while, like I wasn't doing it because teaching, as much as I love teaching and I want to give everything, like those girls, like the girls who've taken my class, they know like I give everything to them. But then I was like starting to feel like there wasn't like enough going into me, especially in a creative sense. Right?
You weren't keeping anything for yourself.
Right. Like even as in a creative sense, like I didn't have like other dancers around me that would also be like, you know, let's go dance, right? Like the not in the same context. Like for them, going out wasn't just about dancing, right? So I had to kind of quickly like reach out to people who are dancers or have like their own classes and stuff and tell them like I'm pulling up to you now because I need that. Like I need like I said, I'm in the season of like having people pour into me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that goes even for that.
You were giving energy to the rooms we were walking in. And albeit it's something beautiful because you're teaching these girls, and that's amazing. That's beautiful. We're not going to downplay that. But to your point, you weren't keeping. If you needed a month off, just kind of like ground yourself and recenter everything. It means you were giving a lot, and maybe in your spare time or if anything, not going to circles where you were also receiving a lot.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's important for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm such a big advocate for that. I tell people all the time to not let certain things consume them and for them to always go back to the things that make them happy. And then here I am like.
But that's what happens. You become a preacher of what you're trying to pass on where you forget to practice it.
Yeah.
You're just trying to get other people to like understand what you have figured out. But it's hard when you start preaching it. It's you got to get that mirror back in your room. So you can look at it and be like, oh, wait, this is where I belong, in your happy place.
Yeah.
And it's also, sorry to cut you off, it's
No,
also
it's-
full circle though, right? Because the people that give the best advice is because they've been through the or are currently going through the thing. So
Right.
the reason your words might be so powerful to the next person is because you know what you have to do for you, whether you're doing it at the moment or not,
Yeah.
and that it ends up resonating and helping somebody else. Sorry to
Absolutely.
cut you off.
Yeah, no, and that's really spot on, and it's funny that we're, that's what we're talking about right now, because that's really where my life has been for the past few months, ever since the retreat. I've been in this space of transformation, I guess you could say, right? Like, and I know this about myself because I see the patterns in myself. Every year is kind of the same. Like, you know how people have seasonal like depression or like seasonal like anxiety and things like that. Well,
Yeah.
I have the same thing, right? Where like there's certain times in the year where I'm like super high energy, and then there's other times where I'm like in a very creative space, and then there's times where I'm just like, I don't want nobody to talk to me. I'm like, just want to be by myself, and that's it.
Is there anything that triggers those shifts for you?
Probably the fact that I'm just the type of person that remembers like incidents and things that happen. So it's like you get into a car accident like around Thanksgiving, and then the following year around Thanksgiving, you're like not trying to get into a car. Instantly, you start thinking about that. So I'm kind of like the same thing. Like I put a lot of meaning and a lot of significance into like moments that this time last year, I started thinking about like, oh, where was I last year, right? And then I started thinking about like, oh, where am I going to be in a year, right? And yeah, so to answer your question, yeah, in May, right before May is always like a very tough time because I'm in a very reflective state, and then May comes around because it's my birthday month, and then I'm like on a high. So I just like I'm super reflective. I'm ready to go into like 28, and then I'm on high. I'm like making lists of goals and making vision boards and like doing all of these things, having a word for myself, like what's the word for the new year and all of this. So I'm on a high,
Yeah.
and then like a month or two after that high, it like stops. Like it instantly stops, and now it's just like, oh shit, I'm 20, like I'm 28.
And
What's
there
next?
comes that moment again.
And then comes that moment again, and we're just like, okay, so the first 2 months of 28 was cool. Like you had your fun, right? So what's next, right? And I do that to myself a lot. Like I'm constantly like coaching myself and training myself, like what's next, what do you have planned, you have 8 months left, 7 months left. And to a lot of people that might seem like a lot of pressure, because you're telling yourself like things have to get done. So yeah, I get into that mode, and then if I don't have healthy outlets, right, then you just have those moments where you get stuck. And I used to have a lot of those moments where it was like a lot of moments of getting stuck. This is the first time where I've been in a very uncomfortable position with where I feel like I'm at, where instead of being so like, I need to have a plan and I've just like sat back and like surrendered and was just like, what's going to happen is going to happen.
Fire.
Like I know what needs to be done. I'm just going to do what I need to do.
Yeah.
And everything else is going to fall into place. But for someone like me, that's really hard.
I can tell by your energy.
Yeah.
It's listen, life does that to you. It
Yeah.
forced a breather on you. Stop, breathe,
Yeah.
collect yourself.
Absolutely.
And when you're ready, go again.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you have that type of personality that is just like super on fire. Like I'm here all the time, super on go. And then sometimes I just need to like stop and do nothing and just exist, right? Like just be happy that you're alive.
So in those moments of like ups and downs, right? Is there something that you know of yourself that you can like target to like bring you back to center? Because I'll say for like me and probably other people, we all go through that moment where it's like you're very happy, you're very high energy. Like let's say summertime, right? It's shining outside, it's nice and bright. You're outside, you're at the beach all the time, maybe dancing all the time for you. But then fall comes around, or winter comes around and you're always in the house, you're stuck, that can kind of depress certain people. So do you have like something that you can target to trigger yourself to go back to center and not fall off the wagon?
That's a good question. I I guess like the one thing that I can just think about that makes me, I don't want to say like forget what's going on, but like gives me that, I guess, that break where I can kind of center myself, um, has a lot to do with the releasing of how I'm feeling. So at first thing is like I need to release all of that, like whatever I have on me, whatever, feelings of depression, like anything, whatever I feel like I'm building up inside because of the season or things that I'm remembering, I have to release that. So whether that's like talking or and talking and me venting,
Yeah.
writing it down or dancing, like those are the things that like bring me back to like, okay, like things are gonna be okay, or you shake it off. um Recently, I guess, like I've tried to give myself more credit with where I've been or where I'm going in my journey. So like when I think back to like where I was a few years ago and I think about where I am now, and I think, well, you got over that, and you're here right now. So whatever it is that you have going on right now, take a deep breath, and you're gonna be fine. So I have to kind of remind myself of like, you've come along a really long way, and that is what brings me back. Like, okay, like everything else that's going on right now, I'm not gonna trip about it too much. And that's hard when you're like driven, like when you're very emotionally driven or driven by the heart.
Yeah.
Everything is going to kind of like
Hit you.
like,
Yeah.
and sometimes you don't know how it hits you. um and the same impulsive behavior you have when you're taking those things on is the same impulsive behavior that you
That's
have
true,
to take
yeah.
it out.
That's true.
So I had to just find like the things that make me happy,
Yeah.
right, which is dancing, writing, and like all that kind of stuff. Family time. I never realized how important it was to surround yourself with family until like the last few years, and that came with like understanding that there was a lot of things I had to let go. Same thing, like pain and misunderstandings and things like that, for me to realize like, okay, spending time with your family is important. And
Yeah.
I'm still working on it. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm at my parents' house every Sunday for dinner, but that's something I'm striving towards, right? That I want to spend extra time.
Those things are a work in progress for
Yeah.
the rest of your
Absolutely.
life, right? Because
Absolutely.
life
Yeah.
happens still as you go. So
Yeah. But yeah, I just find those like little things, like things that make me happy, and I try to go back to that um, whenever I'm feeling.
that's awesome. I will make a comment as far as like the spending time with family. In your case, it's probably a positive experience, right? So it's a good thing, and I'm sure, at least for me, and I'm sure for you as well, it's a positive one. But there is people that they unfortunately don't have that strong connection with their family, so they need to find maybe like their friends instead of their family to bring them to the happy point, because when they go back to family they get into the negative mindset, or like it throws them into the wrong direction of what they're trying to do. But what I'm trying to say is that it's a blessing for you to have that, so it's a
Yeah.
really
Sure.
good thing that you can say that you see the importance of going back and spending time with your family.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that, well, not funny, but when people don't have that connection with their family, right?
Yeah.
Or, um, whatever dynamic you had in your upbringing, it kind of has a lot to do with like the type of relationship you have with your parents now,
Yeah.
right? A lot of people have non-existent relationships, but there's something that I've learned, right? Because as much as I try to that I'm looking towards prioritizing the time I spend with family and my close friends, we're also talking about family dynamics that were very hard growing up.
For
Like
sure.
I'll be honest, like I love my parents to death, but it was hard, right? Like we don't see eye to eye in a lot of things. I wouldn't change the way that they raised me because I feel like they did a pretty good job. But are there things that would be that would make maybe adulthood a little easier in terms of like things that I could go to them about. Yeah. You know, but I think that's when you realize like my family is my family, my friends are my chosen family, right? And even people in your family and even some of your friends, there's certain people you can go to about certain things, and then there's other people that you just can't, you know? So when it comes to like being grounded, like if I ever feel like I'm not grounded, then I go to my family. I go to my brother, you know, or I'll ask him for his opinion on things, or I'll ask my mom for her opinion on things. And me and my mom think about things in two completely different ways. But I know that they can ground me. I might not like what they have to say, but I know that that's what I get out of that. I have friends who are a little bit more free spirited. So, and if ever I feel kind of stuck and need like that push to push the dreamer in me, then I go to them.
I was about to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, so then I go to them. But like there's people like within your friends and your family, like some people are just going to get certain aspects of you, you know? And I think that's also important. I know I had to view my family dynamic in a different way for me to appreciate spending more time with them. Because if I was going to go in a way of like, well, you guys aren't doing what I need you guys to do for me, then it was always going to be about what are they doing for me instead of thinking like, what can you get out of this? You know? So like, yeah, the family dynamic had definitely had to change. Because I understand when people say like, I don't have a good relationship with my dad, or I don't have a good relationship with my mom. Again, I love my parents to death, but there's been times throughout my childhood where it was really tough.
You know the difficulties in that.
Yeah. And this is no shade like on their parenting skills. You know what I mean? Like my parents did what they could with what they knew. You know?
That's one thing that I'm very advocate about, is saying like our parents are just old kids.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because they
and then we become that.
Yeah. Well, that's what they're teaching us, right? So it's really up to us in the moment to realize that like, oh, they don't really know what they're doing. We're following them because we grew up following them and having to do what they say, but in reality, they're just older kids.
Yeah.
Who a lot of our parents had us way too young, so they didn't really know what they were doing. And then they got stuck in that moment, that feeling, that habit that they were in, whatever it may be. And so now it's like we have to look at them and understand that for us to make a difference, if we keep following the path, we're going to end up doing the same thing and keep the tradition going.
Absolutely.
And we're never going to change whatever the problem may be in there.
And also the moment you understand that they were once in your position, i.e. a kid, and their parents probably, or whoever raised them, probably did a job that was maybe they were maybe rougher or stronger or less communicative. I'm not gonna try and pronounce that and butcher that, but communication wasn't strong in their household. They might think you might be thinking, and my parents don't communicate enough, but in their mind they did a great job because when they were growing up, they didn't get half of what they gave you. And I think it's just the cycle as the generations pass. Obviously, people grow more knowledgeable on what a child needs or like a kid needs, or the chances for that are greater. But to your point is growing up, until you reach that point where you realize that and you realize what to pick apart from what circle. As like you said, you go to your family to feel grounded. You might go to certain friends when you need to feel like uplifted and like pushed, like, oh, you can do it, you know. I think that's important to understand that you can't get everything from a single source.
Yeah, no, that's like, I always think about it like this, right? Like if you had a bucket and you only had one fountain going into it, that's only one. If you had like different fountains going into that same bucket, that bucket starts to fill up a lot faster, right? So you have different things coming from different places. You become so full, right? Just getting one thing from one side and God forbid you're getting it from the wrong people. You get what I'm saying? So
you get the wrong
having
kind of
different
water.
As well.
You get contaminated water.
Right. So
this liquor, I need water.
no, for real. So, you know, having different people that can bring different things that touch different aspects of your life is really important. And I've learned that recently, really.
People and things. Look, you just said your outlets are dancing, writing, right?
Yeah.
And venting. You don't do just the one thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think people need multiple. You need to have, even if it's not, even painting. Like, I think overall I'm just a creative person.
Yeah.
So, like, I love anything that makes me feel like I'm putting, like,
A sense of expression.
yeah, my sense of expression into it, right? So that's why I paint, I draw, like, I do anything that has to, like, I made bracelets growing up, like, anything that has to do with, like, me putting el toquecito mío, right? Like, the little thing that I, like.
The Spanish.
She was hiding that. She was hiding that.
my little,
popper.
my little, like, flavor to it, that's.
Would you say that every human has a creative, a creator inside of them?
100%.
Right? I constantly, like, not constantly, but when I'm having a conversation with someone that seems to kind of indicate or like push towards the fact that they're not creative, I get like this thing inside of me to like say it to them, like, no, you're wrong. You are a creator.
Yeah.
Just like everyone else. You just have to like, you have to tap into it,
Yeah.
Wake up.
No, not for nothing, but if you think you're not a creator, like, you're a creator. Like, everybody,
Right.
everyone is. I think what happens is, like, and this goes back to, like, what happens in your upbringing and, like, who you're surrounding yourself with and, like, what happened in your childhood and things like that. Because kids are creative. Like, look at kids, right? Kids are super creative. Like, we got kids mimicking, like, their favorite artists, and we have little girls dressing up like mom, or, like, little boys doing what dad does, or things. Kids say, like, the most outlandish things sometimes. So kids are creative, like, and we were those kids,
Purest
right?
form,
But then it's like, then school happened, and then, certain rules in the house, or which I'm not saying that rules in the house are not important, but, all of these things start to kind of, like, go into, like, mold this child to become
they're
this
hindering
thing.
their creative side.
Yeah, so, I take a kid who's, like, super talkative, right? And they could be talkative about a lot of things. And it's like, the more you... right? Well, because I was that kid who always got in trouble for talking in class, right? And I'm just like, I could have been, like, a news anchor or something. If, had that part been shaped into an actual skill, instead of being told, like, you talk too much, like shut up.
Looked at something like something negative.
Right. Or kids that do, like, to do art or draw or paint or into music and have a real ear for it, right? We're not pouring into those talents. And so you start kind of making a child's mind go towards, like, well, you just need to, like, eat and make a good living for yourself.
I need to go work at Walmart.
Yeah.
I guess society forced their view of what they should be doing on the kid, and then they cripple whatever things that at times that the kid might be naturally drawn to and might actually excel at, given the proper guidance and opportunity.
Right. I feel like there's a art form in a lot of things that we don't look at as art, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which I think are natural abilities, right? Because it allows us to create, like, for example, mathematicians. Like, I think that's just dope to see somebody be that into something like that, right?
To be able to run numbers in their
heads, and now they're creating all of these things, and then that formula turns into something else, and then that turns into something else.
That's super
you're
fire.
a creator.
Yeah.
Like, you're creating something there, and you're using your talent for, like, math and numbers and things like that to do that. Same thing with people who are really good at computers. Coding is crazy, right?
That's literally a creation.
Right. So I think there's art. There's an art form. There's something to create in a lot of things, and it's sad when somebody doesn't think that they're creative.
It's sad when they take that away from them.
Yeah.
Like, when a kid is, like you said, expressing themselves in a way, and you tell them, like, stop doing that, do something else, like, you're stopping what could be something very important, very big. That little kid could change the world with whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
right? But you are putting a stop to it right there because of usually an adult, because of your lack of belief, your lack of
Recognizing.
ability to do it yourself. Exactly, like recognizing that like you could have done it, you were stopped, and you don't realize this.
Yeah.
So now what you're doing is stopping the next generation from doing the same, and it keeps going instead of kind of like encouraging it, pushing it. You know what I'm saying? Allowing them to believe, to understand how powerful they are, how powerful their brain can be if they just hone that thing and keep going.
Yeah. And it speaks to a lot of people who do feel like they're creative but haven't had the opportunity to put it out there, because I was one of those people too. It wasn't until I decided to become a Zumba instructor where I was just like, okay, I'm gonna put my foot forward and try to get into a creative space, because prior to that, it almost felt like silly. So now when I look back and or at least now when I preach to people like everybody's a creator, or everybody should be creative, when I look back to like the moments where I first started to step into my creativity and when I was just like, okay, now this is time for you to be that same creator, I was like, there's no way, like no one's gonna like this, or I'm not that good. And you take yourself through this rabbit hole of telling
Your
yourself
worst
like,
enemy.
that you're like, no one's gonna like it, when in reality it's like no one's supposed to like what you create. You created it. Someone's supposed to just come by and be like, oh, that's dope, and some people are gonna come by and be like, I don't care for it, you know?
What's ironic about that is that when you're thinking like that in that moment, you're not thinking of all the people that might feel the same about how you feel about something, how you're gonna create something. And what's ironic is once you push that, like you argue with yourself, you're like, no, I'm gonna do it, and you stop judging. I don't ever think we stop judging ourselves, but you kind of quiet that voice a little bit, and then you push forward. People that feel the same way reveal themselves to you because they start gravitating towards your art, especially people that didn't grow up with you or weren't like coming up with you, because they can't chain you to whatever memory they have of you. Like, oh, we're both from this neighborhood, or we both in third grade we both did bad in class or whatever, you know. There's no way. She's not smart enough to do that, whatever. It's all these little things of their perspective that is not reality. It's just what in their mind they're making it. I guess the beauty of meeting a person on the internet or meeting people randomly that don't know you and just know you on that art or that thing that you're putting out. The beauty of that is they can only judge you on that, but regardless if they judge you or not, they can recognize certain things that they might like off of what you're creating, which is the importance of you not defeating yourself and being like, damn, this be dope if I, that's stupid. People gonna think it's stupid. But you don't know, bro. You haven't put it out. You haven't put it out.
Yeah, and there's gonna be, like, the older you get, you're gonna find your people.
There you go.
Like, your people are gonna just gravitate towards you. Yeah. And like, I had to learn that. Like, regardless of where I go, first I had to really understand like who I am, right? Like, and this happened maybe 2 years ago, where I was finally like, oh, this is me. Like, this is how I'm feeling right now. Like, I felt on top of the world, and that was right after my first show, when I did my first bodybuilding competition in Vegas. And I didn't even place. Yeah. Right? Like, I didn't even place. But to me, when I got off that stage, like, you couldn't tell me anything. Like, you couldn't tell me that I came in last place, because I didn't care. Like, I didn't care about none of that. I went into like the show knowing that the journey that I had been on up until that point was just significant to me, and that's all I cared about. So once I stepped into this place of you're really that bitch. I'm sorry, but like, you're really that bitch.
You can curse here.
You know? Yeah. That's when I was like, there's so much else. Like, there's just all these other things that you've done, that you've dipped and dabbed in, the writing, right? Like, the ear of music that I have, right? Like, just how much I love music from a whole bunch of different places. Like, all of these things that you've done, but you've never been consistent and self-disciplined enough to pull through all of them. So bodybuilding made me realize, like, stop playing with yourself. You know what I mean? You got to stop playing with yourself. Like, you look at what you've done. And I did 2 more shows after that. After the last one, I was like,
That's fine.
all right, I'm feeling good, you know? Like, I'm feeling like I'm stepping into who I'm becoming. So I was like very excited about what was next, right? Now that I was trying to be, again, be creative in a lot of different spaces, right? I started Revive and Thrive shortly after the bodybuilding competitions because I wanted to tie, you know, these type of messages towards mental health, because a lot of the answers to mental health, or a lot of the things that people struggle with when it comes to like depression and anxiety, are just tied to them not having resources around them, right? Not having things that can pull like positive image out, like things that can make them feel seen and heard and understood. Feeling like that and not having outlets is a big issue. Sometimes makes the issues even worse, you know?
Right.
So yeah, once I was like
I'm glad.
on top of the world, once I was on top of the world, and I realized like, okay, no, you're really that girl. Now you have to really start feeding her, like put all the love and like attention that the consistency and discipline that you put into yourself these last few weeks into everything else that you have going on.
Yeah.
You know, so that's where I've been for the last 2 years.
That's super fire.
Yeah, that's
That's
fire.
super fire. Yes.
Focus is crazy, right? Like focus, think of focus or a filter or a lens on life, specifically our own. You had all those things going for you, or have, I should say. Let me correct my words. And you focusing on the negative or what you don't have yet, or this and that, might keep you from enjoying and you know, giving value to those parts of yourself that they deserve love. They deserve recognition too. And it took you doing yet another thing that you destroyed to somewhat look back and then adjust your focus, right? And then see the value in the things you do, and all of that coming together, and you know, seeing the value that you have.
Yeah, for sure.
For you to go up there and do that breaks that that negative thinking that I can't do, I'm not enough feeling. Once you're up there, like you said you didn't even place, right, the first time you did it.
Yeah.
So it's the fact that you went up there. That's where you won. I'm actually up here. I already won. You guys might have gotten medals and whatever, but I'm up here. I
and that
beat
was
y'all.
enough for me.
Yeah.
I was like, and that is enough for me. To me, it was always just like, if y'all would have known, like where I'm coming from, like where I was a year ago. Listen, I'm good. I'm gonna take my little sword and, you know, go back to Jersey.
That's a big dub.
It ain't little. Nah,
it ain't little, and can nobody tell you anything.
Yep.
Right. And so yeah.
I think it's dope that you did that, the bodybuilding, and the rest of the amazing things that you have done. But it's dope to see how you reach that point of pushing through that challenge made you like look back and see like the value and recognize the value. I think it ties in with like mental health and deep reflection, and you know, and just somewhat like auto scanning yourself and learning to understand yourself. And that sometimes takes time. Shit, it took me 30 years.
Right. Yeah. And it's taken me 28. You know, it's mental health is a very interesting thing because you know, growing up, you don't talk about it too much at home. You don't really look at it as like mental health. Like it's just like there's nothing wrong with you. Like if you're not dying, there's nothing wrong with you.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah, that's crazy. I feel like that's a Spanish parent thing.
Oh, 100%. I think that comes from any collective culture, right? Because I know a lot of Caribbean parents who are like that. I know a lot of African parents who are like that. I know a lot of Asian parents that are like that. It comes from, if you're from a collective community like a collective society, I should say, a collective society, then yeah, like you 9 times out of 10 you probably had parents tell you like,
Yeah.
you're not dying, you're fine. Like your feelings, yeah. Well, this roof over your head,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Put them shits away right now.
Put
do
those
the
things away, exactly. Whereas in the U.S. it's a little bit different. We're very like it's just about us,
Yeah.
right? So
Wow, that's true.
when you're coming from a very traditional household and you're being raised in like in a very traditional way, but you're an American kid, it's very different. You see a whole bunch of different cultures, you see a whole bunch of different family dynamics and things like that. Like kids yelling at their parents, like that was never happening.
Which is
Donde?
wild.
Donde?
That was never happening in my household.
Yeah.
But then you also see like kids being more expressive with their parents and their parents listening to them, and you're looking at them like, so she just listened to you, and I'm just like, why does my mom not listen to me? Like and then you go home and you try it, and mom's like,
Why are you talking?
¿Qué?
to
¿De qué tú
me?
estás hablando?
like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So yeah, and so the older you get, and you realize like this is where I had like my aha moment, right? Like I started therapy really young, and I started it for not, this could be a conversation for another day, but I started therapy because I came out really early. Like I came out to my parents that I was bisexual, right? And then after that, it was just like, okay, we're going to go to therapy. It wasn't so much because, well, I don't even know how to put this. It was maybe like them not understanding how to be there for me.
Yeah.
Right? Or how to even carry that type of conversation.
Was that normal to them, or it wasn't normal as
Absolutely not.
Right?
Like it was
Okay.
instant. Like this is a phase.
Yeah.
The
There's a denial and a
infamous
rejection
question,
from their
like,
end.
were you abused? Like, it was a lot of that, right? And I was really young, so doing therapy for that, it was kind of like, and it wasn't like conversion therapy or anything like that, right? It was just more so like, maybe you need to talk to somebody so you can get your feelings all together, right? Mm-hmm. But then as I'm growing up, right, that was like right before high school. So as I'm growing up and like I'm just going through high school and, like self-esteem issues and like all of these high school, everything that we go through in high school, right? Yeah. I was just feeling so much, just feeling and feeling and feeling. And I didn't know what the hell was going on. Like it's like I have this going on and I feel like I can't really be myself because am I going to be liked, or I'm kind of forced to fit in this other way of being. So like my parents are happy and like my family's happy and my brother's still really young. So you know what I mean? Like here's this 15-year-old that has all of these things in their mind. Like I can't be what I want to be or who I want to be just yet, I guess, for whatever reason, whatever that means, right? And that started to trickle down into like a whole bunch of other things, right? Like being angry or the way that your parents talk to you, right? I wouldn't say that the discipline part of my childhood was a problem, but whenever something was wrong or I needed to talk about my feelings, it wasn't enough of that. And this goes back to me saying, like, I'm a person who I need to vent. It took years for me to realize that I'm a person that needs to vent, where I could have realized that in high school and had a better way of going to my parents or going to teachers or going to my guidance counselor and saying, hey, I need to talk. Right? So then that's what therapy was for me. It was like my outlet to talk. Yeah. And then that's when I realized, like, okay, like you need to just continue doing this. And so as I continued doing it, as I continued going to therapy, it was like other things that were coming up to light, other things that I've never touched on before that linked to why I was like so rebellious or why I was, prior to a few like turning points in my life, like I was the type of person that I had a nasty attitude. Like I had a nasty attitude. I would kind of go about life thinking like, yeah, and like, what are you going to do about it? kind of thing. And I was kind of like that at home too, right? But like deep down inside, I'm just like, I'm trying to please my parents, but then at the same time, it's just like, nah, like I need to like be me. But I wasn't going about it the same, like the right way, because there was just so much going on in my head.
You were carrying it all in
Right, exactly. And it was just, and what I've realized is like when things aren't taken care of like at the source, it's just going to continue to flow into the next phase of your life. Sure. Right? And feelings that maybe started off as just anger starts to turn into like resentment. You know, now you're like really resenting this person or a situation.
It's
or
like the problem keeps leveling up.
Yeah,
festers,
and
it festers and it builds.
Right, exactly. And then, like, let's say you go through something really traumatic in your life and you don't deal with it the first time. You're gonna get re-traumatized again when you are in a situation where it may not even be the situation at hand. It could just be that the situation is reminding your mind or your body of what you felt when you experienced it the first time. You know what I mean? So, you know, in high school or after college, and I'm arguing over stupid stuff. Now, when I look back, I'm like, you're picking fights because you have all of this other nonsense going on. And it was never about that, you know? Yeah. The job that I have now made me realize like the importance of being able to be aware of what your triggers are, right? What do you do when you're triggered? What are your coping mechanisms? Like what helps you cope, right? Like knowing those things are so important, because when I started realizing that I was picking fights with people and I'm not just talking about strangers, right? Like with strangers, it was never an issue. I'm talking about people who were like really close to me. So when you're picking fights with people who are supposed to be, you know, family or your friends and things like that, but deep down inside, you're like battling something else, you need to take care of that first before you even try to touch on something else, right? But the problem becomes like a lot of people aren't ready to understand like what it is that they need to.
They don't want to
work
face
on.
it.
Yeah.
They don't want to face those.
And sometimes it's a lot of stuff to unpack.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's our own fault. So we don't want to face that. We're like, no, I don't want to accept that it was me that did something off.
Right.
Doing the work is scary,
yeah. Right. I feel like and let me just say, like, I've never said like publicly like how I came out. You know, like a lot of people don't even know that I'm bisexual. So, but that's one of the things that for me, for a very long time, was just one of those things that I just couldn't get over. Right, like. That time in my life, like I just couldn't get over it. And it wasn't until the last few years when I'm just like, okay, like it's time for me to have a conversation with my parents. Like it's time for us to revisit this again, so they understand like how I truly felt with the reaction, right? Like how I truly felt about them not being there for me the way that I needed, right? Like, but more so, and it wasn't to point the finger at them as if like you guys did something wrong. It was more so for me to be like
free from it.
Yeah.
Like I'm no longer that 16-year-old girl who's like holding on to the fact that like, you know,
who's going to tell you this in an angry manner.
You know, exactly. Yeah. And then it took for me to have that conversation with my parents and to hear my dad and my mom be like, you have to make what is going to make, like you have to do what's going to make you happy. And we're going to love you regardless.
Is this how they received it the second time around?
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Dope.
That's beautiful. Shout out to your parents for that. For real. For real. Because they finally just kind of like allowed you to be, which probably gives you that freedom now, right?
You unshackled
to be,
yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And actually, this is the first time, like I said, that I'm saying it out loud. So, like, it's definitely like a surreal moment because, you know, I also had to accept that my parents may never fully, and my dad was honest with me, and I'll be honest, like he was like, don't bring her around me, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I don't want to like really see it, but you know what I mean? I'll come and visit you, you know, I'll come and see you, I'll come and visit you, I love you, you know.
Still wants you to be happy. He just can't accept
if this is what you're dragging, you gotta let it go.
You found
Type.
common
You know what I
ground.
mean? Like, and the same thing, and that was still a really hard pill to swallow because for me, it's just like, I know that I'm a daddy's little girl, and I know like what they envision for me, right? And I've had even conversations with my brother when he's like, D, like you gotta do what you gotta do for you. You know,
Sure.
like how long is it gonna take? How many more years of like the same story repeating in your mind about like you holding on to the fact that mom and dad were never like cool with it? And now I understand it because it's just like, how are they gonna be cool about it when their like 14-year-old daughter is saying this to them? You know what I mean? Like, I've had to come to the acceptance that it's also hard for parents, right? So now that I'm in my adulthood, it's just like, okay, like I guess now that I had the conversation with them and that they received it in a way of just like, I still love you, that was enough for me.
Oh man, that
You know?
must have been so freeing. I'm glad you did
Yeah,
that.
but
I'm glad that happened like that.
yeah, and that conversation was very much so at a time in my life where like my mental health space was rough, you know, and like with help from people on the outside, right? Like I have a lot of formal support, right? I have a therapist. And then I was also seeing another lady, and with both of their help, it brought me to be able to have that conversation with them. You know, having family and friends to support you is really, really important. But I'm also a super huge advocate for therapy. Whatever that therapy is, you know, it could be talking therapy, it could be music therapy, it could be dance therapy, but some sort of therapy, some sort of like professional outlook where you can truly understand what it is that you're feeling, right? Because our feelings are so temporary. You know, they come and go.
Yeah.
You know, some things may stay in the back of our minds and then flare up when we're reminded of something.
Trigger, yeah.
But having some sort of formal support is always really, really important. Or even books. Like if you don't want to really jump into talking to somebody, books, like there's so many books on self-development and like mental health and things like that help you understand, like, you know, you're not the only person that goes through this.
Which we feel that way
yeah.
sometimes. It's like, oh, this is only happening to me.
And then that awareness might enable the person to try a little harder to do the work because you don't have a unique problem. No. You know, yeah. And books are amazing. That's true what you're saying.
Yeah,
books will tell you how it is too. Like I'm reading The Mountain Is You, and that it's kicking me in the face. But it's good. It's good. It's necessary.
Yeah. No. Listen. Sometimes that stuff is needed. I feel like the best versions of me, or the times that I feel like I have leveled up the most, it's when I've been in my most uncomfortable state, or it's been in the moments where people who know me really well pull me to the side and say like, you're fucking up, you know, like, or if it's not like you're fucking up, it's, are you okay? Like,
is that
and
tough
I
to
really
hear?
need you to tell me like, are you okay? Because I'm the type of person, if you ask me if I'm okay, I'm gonna always tell you I'm good. I'm gonna always tell you that I'm good. Even when I'm not, I'm gonna tell you that I'm good. And so it takes people who really know me. Shout out to y'all. Like, it takes the people who really it takes the people who really know me to be like, something ain't wrong.
They see
right
it
with
through
her.
the facade.
Yeah.
Does that or is that painful to like hear when someone is pointing that out to you, that like something is wrong with you, like you're not acting yourself?
Not anymore.
That's
not
awesome.
Anymore.
You've grown past the difficulties of facing it.
Yeah, not anymore. I used to feel some type of way when like people who were close to me would call me out on certain things, because again, I used to kind of have this attitude that it was like, you can't tell me shit, you know, like I don't care about what nobody else says. I mean, I didn't always come off that way, but mentally, like, I was always just like,
don't look at my soft bits.
Right,
don't
exactly.
Vulnerable stuff. Leave that.
Right.
That's for me. Don't look at that.
Right, but no, I've learned to really take in like when someone has to say what they have to say to me. You know.
What advice would you give somebody, you know, in hopes that they could reach, you know, some progress if they're struggling with whatever they're struggling with, and they feel like they can't come to anybody, or they don't know what they're doing wrong and keep landing at the same space. What would be an initial step? Not because your solution might not be the exact solution for the next person, but what would be like a healthy initial step for somebody to at least get the bar rolling on, whether that's communication or seeking out help or whatever they need to take a deep, long look at themselves and maybe feel empowered to do what they need to do to change that?
Honestly, how do I put it together? I think the very first step has to be you have to recognize that there's something that needs to change.
So being honest with yourself.
Acceptance.
You have to be honest with yourself.
That's so difficult.
It's so hard.
Like nothing is gonna work. Doesn't matter how many books you read. If you don't think that something needs to change, you're never gonna change.
Well, you're probably not even gonna pick up the book if you don't think something is wrong with you.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like you have to think about, do I need to, like, what do you need to change if there's anything that needs to change, right? And I guess my thought process is, if things aren't working out the way you want them to work out and you've tried things your way, then it might be time for you to like reevaluate what you think you've been doing, and maybe humbling yourself a little bit to listen to somebody else.
A lot of times rock bottom will nudge a person that way.
Yeah.
Once you feel like absolute, like, I've hit the point that I never want to feel like this. I have all of this built up. I need to climb out of all of this.
Yeah.
Some people recognize that they climb out of it, and some, unfortunately, kind of stay in that rut, whether it's a little longer or whatever it is. But sometimes the wall has to hit you, right, for you to be like, I never want to feel like this again. What's causing this?
Yeah.
And then you keep going, oh, it's this. Yeah, and then what's causing this? Well, it's this, is this, is this. And then you do that, the kind of that climb back, but it's so hard, you know.
Yeah. And it's hard because, like, it's just much easier for us to put the blame on somebody else.
For sure.
You know? And this goes back to when I think about, like, all the years I spent feeling like, well, I can't really be who I am because my parents don't accept me. I mean, what have, like, to me, right? Like, what have you done? Right? Like, what have you done to be more yourself? Like, have you had an honest conversation with them? Because you haven't, right? Have you explored that part of yourself? You haven't. Have you, you know what I mean? Like, so then you start going down this, like, checklist of things, because how much of what your current suffering has to do with what you've inflicted on yourself?
It is harder when you're young, though.
Yeah.
Because when you're young, they have this authoritarian power over you.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you're under my roof, you're going to do what I say,
Yeah.
you're going to go where I tell you to go, like that, you know? So it's like, it's much harder to be able to come to them and openly have a conversation where you feel heard.
Yeah.
Because if they disagree, you're under my roof, so as long as you're under here, you'll do what I say.
Yeah.
And that part is so like, oh.
So here's what I think about, like, what happens in, like, the phases of our lives, right? How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
30, I'm 30.
30?
30 is
I'm 21.
I'm
I'm 33 now.
16.
Wide up, you lying.
How old?
33 now.
33.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm 28, right? So I think what happens is that in high school, you go through this, like, I'm not listening to what my parents say. Like, I'm going where my friends are going, right? And so you get in trouble. You don't know how to communicate with them. You're, like, super easily influenced. You want to dress like your favorite rapper. If you're into music, you want to rap like your favorite rapper. Like, teenagers are super heavily influenced, even though they have, like, their own thing going. Like,
They think they know who they are, but they're actually being.
So we spend that time of life just like, like, whatever, I'm doing whatever. And then in your 20s, early 20s, now you can do things like legally, right? So now you're going to bars and clubs, and now still very much so influenced, right? Because you want to be, depending on where you're from, like we're in a place that's like kind of metropolitan. This is a metropolitan area, so you have New York, Philly. We have a night scene. So going out to the club, to the lounge, to the bar, like that's the thing to do. So you want to do what everybody else is doing, right?
Yeah.
So you're still influenced at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So still very much influenced, still very much so looking for yourself, like what you got going on. Then you're like in your late 20s that I just, I'm here now. And you start thinking back to all of that, because how I'm reacting to life now is due to what brought me to now, right? So even though as a teenager I wasn't understanding what was happening, now as an adult, when I look back, now I understand back then. So you spend like the last bit of your 20s, like if you're someone who's like self-aware of wanting to change certain things, right?
That's key.
So if you're somebody who's aware of wanting to change certain things, you realize that there's an inner child that you have to heal now, right?
That's facts.
And so you spend the later of your 20s figuring out who that inner child is, or what that inner child needed, so you can be that for yourself now, so you don't pack this into your 30s. So let's say now you turn 30, you're in the beginning of your 30s. I feel like that's when you're really like, okay, like I'm doing some work on myself. I unlearned and learned different things, right? I'm not the same person I was in high school. You become a little bit more emotionally responsible. You become a little bit more emotionally intelligent, right? You've worked on your communication. At this point in life, you've weeded out the snakes in the grass, so you don't.
Certain people,
yeah, like so. You're starting to feel like you're carrying in your 30s with your day ones, and you're making space for the people who are gonna come. Like I said earlier, like you're gonna make space for your tribe. So now you have space in your life for the people who really fuck with you. Like these people, they're not fucking with you because they know you from around the way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're fucking with you
that.
because like the way that you carry yourself, your vibe, like what you're bringing it to the table, right? Like they're fucking with the very healed version of you, which is very healthy, right? If you are the type of person who's been doing the work, right? And what I think is important is making sure that you're having these type of conversations with your tribe, right? So now you're in your mid 30s, and like you're now starting to think about like, do I settle down? Do I get married? Like I think. And that's just my timeline. I don't want to call it a timeline, but I think it's just like phases. I think it's just like how naturally we just react, right? Yeah. I think it's very normal to start thinking about that, at least for our society, right? Like where we are at now.
Yeah.
For you, our parents had it a little bit different because they were getting married earlier. But for our times right now, I think that that's like the natural order, right? That you spend your 20s just living. You spend it living, you spend it making mistakes and doing a whole bunch of shit. And then you in your 30s and you're just like, this is me, this is not. This is me, this is not. This is me, this is not. And then you get to a point where you're just like chilling right before you start hitting like real adulthood, right? I call like 40s and up like real adulthood. Like that's when you're really like, you think of yourself being like more established maybe, or who knows, like everybody, it's different for everybody, but for me, I feel like that's what the pattern has looked like so far,
Yeah. One thing that's very true is that as a teen, you are very rebellious. I think that also comes from when we're younger than that, right? We might even see our parents as a like nurturing, almost like Messiah figure, right? Mm-hmm. They're like a deity in a way. Because their word is law, and whatever they're teaching you is the absolute truth.
Yeah, they're perfect.
They're perfect, exactly. And as you grow up or start getting into your teens, the world has more influence over you because you're doing more social interactions, or just certain things are approaching your life where your eyes are a little more open, and then what you might feel is a hint of betrayal because they're not as perfect as you thought. They're not always right about everything. What they do say is not law. It's still law in their house because And then it becomes forceful rather than natural. I believe in what you're saying. So then you just hit a complete shift where it's like, well, I'm not what you said I was because you lied to me. You're not perfect. You're not. So therefore, what other thing, Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, what other thing is not true, right? Let me go out there and search it, and let me go search for me. And you're sort of forceful. You're going like 200 miles per hour trying to find who you are back then, but you're going about it all the wrong way because you might put validation at the beginning of all that, and it's not about that yet, right?
Right.
Because how are you going to be validated by people who don't even know who you are? You're going so fast.
Yeah.
And to your point, you reach your 20s, you're doing that in a more grown and able version of yourself.
Yeah.
And late 20s, you start to like slow down. You're like, whoa, hold on. I'm okay not liking this and not doing this and not doing that. Oh my God, damn, I'm so okay with this. What have I been doing? I need to go back and fix that. What do I need? This thing that I was neglecting just because I thought I didn't need that for these people to accept me. I got to go back and search for that. And to your point, you arrive at your 30s. Like you said, if you're a person that has like progressive thinking and growth, and then you're at your 30s, it's really like okay, this is what my 20s should have been, but then not really because you needed that to be where you're at now. And you're like, okay, I'm here. This is actually me, guys.
Yeah.
And then
100%.
naturally, whoever's unchained to their thought of you when you were little, you were like this or like that, those people are going to gravitate towards who you really are.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I can only pray for like self-awareness for a lot of people. Like I always I know that I'm a very self-aware person. It took me a long time, but I'm very aware, a very self-aware person because I catch myself all the time when I'm fucking up or like when I'm doing things that I'm just like, yo, you've learned this lesson already. Like, you really want to learn this shit again? Like, why are you here again? Like, you really want to do this. You want to just waste your time, you know? And sometimes people would think like, well, if you know it, why are you doing it? Well, why do we do half the shit that we do? You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you just feel like you can.
So tell us more about what you're building with the Instagram community and the mental health work that you're doing there.
Okay, so this year, back in, I want to say March, I just decided to start my own organization geared to like more advocacy towards mental health and bringing mental health to like inner cities and Black and brown communities. My first event was in June, like I mentioned earlier. It was a mental health retreat. So like it's called Revive and Thrive Collective. On Instagram, it's Revive Thrive Collective. And the whole point of the organization, you know, it's still my baby, but the whole point of it is to have more conversations about mental health. Like really have people kind of dig deep about like what's going on, right? Like what are your mental health issues? Like I always think about it like this, you know, we all have colds and we all go to our, you know, primary care physician whenever we have a cold. He gives us something and then we get better, right? But then there isn't that same type of attitude when it comes to mental health, right?
True.
The first thing is that people don't want to do therapy. They don't want to sign up for a therapist. They don't want to see anybody for whatever it is that they have going on. The second thing is like you feel more comfortable talking to your friends, right? So for me, the idea came from more like, how can I take the, what's the word, like the ability to be comfortable in a setting like this where it's just like friends talking, and making it more geared to finding solutions for people who are struggling with mental health, right? Is it resources? Do they need community? Do they need more education on like, you know, what certain things are? So at my retreat, I had 5 different workshops. I had one on building confidence. I had one on coping mechanisms, basically just kind of how do you deal with your anxiety. I had one on, it was called mental muscle. So it was about like mental health and fitness, and like how those two things mesh
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
Nice.
I had another one. Why am I drawing a blank? Self love and self care, right? Like, what does self care actually mean, right? Because we could get our nails done all we want, and we can we can have a spa day, or you might buy a new outfit because feeling fresh is what makes you feel good.
Yeah.
But what does self care really mean, right? And that was an amazing workshop. I had all my workshops led by people who I know have like degrees in the profession too. So like I had actual certified personal trainers leading some of them. I had doctors in education. I had MSWs, social workers and people who are licensed. So I had people who have had experience with that type of population to kind of really bring forth the information. I guess you could say they have like the information that I was looking. Because what I really want to do is also be a therapist, right? But in the meantime, since I'm not one right now, how do I still bring all of this together? So I had a few vendors from the area come through. We did like stretching in the morning, like a meditation, or meditation was on plan. And yeah, so the next thing was for Revive and Thrive to have an event for Suicide Prevention Month, which is September, which is also another big thing for me, because I'm someone who's also like experienced that at some point in my life. So suicide prevention and just talking about like what is needed for those type of conversations, because it's really hard. Like, it's really, really hard. I now work in social work, so we have to deal with finding resources for families and children and things like that who are dealing with these kind of things. So in my mind, I'm just like, it's hard for me to find resources for a lot of these families. I can't even imagine for the people who don't have the same amount of what's the word, like accessibility to these types of things, right? So I wanted to start that, especially bringing in more focus on creative therapy, so art therapy, music therapy, dance therapy, fitness as a whole, right? Like, fitness is like, movement in general is like number one medicine for a lot of people who go through like any type of anxiety or depression or anything like that, other than things that are like clinical, right? Because like there's also that aspect that I wanted to bring to the organization, right? Like more education on like what it means to take medication, take away from the stigma of medication. Because the minute you think about like mental health and now this person is taking meds for it, it's just like, oh, they're like they're like crazy, like this person is nuts, right? No. I want to take away from the stigma of having a mental health concentrated conversation. So yeah, and my ultimate goal is to have like a facility very similar to like a wellness center almost, where there's all of these types of therapies there, like they're all in one. So for people who struggle with like social anxiety, like all of these things, like the more that they're talked about and the more that they're put into practice and the more that we work with not only children but like adults who have these things, like, and find what makes it comfortable for them to be able to express themselves, the better it will be to have these conversations for other people to realize, okay, like I'm not alone in this.
Yeah, that's actually smart. You're right. It'll give them the comfort to do the same. Mm-hmm. Just like when you're watching your friends as a teenager do, silly, dumb things, you're like, oh, I could do that too. But in this case, it's like you could watch people express themselves or talk to a therapist, and for them to feel like, no, that's okay, I could do that too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It doesn't feel as lonely or as, I guess, like, because you feel stupid, I guess. That's what it is. And your parents kind of make you feel that way.
Yeah.
And society makes you feel that way. So you don't want to do it. But if you see other people do it and you're trying to open that door for them to understand that it's comfortable. That's actually super fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's dope.
Thanks. Yeah, because I feel, like, and this speaks a lot to just my personal journey. Like, I've struggled a lot with mental health. I've had a really, really rough, like, high school was really rough. Like, early 20s was really rough. A lot of people think that depression just looks one way. Depression looks a lot of different ways. There's been times where I've been really depressed, like, bad, and people would have never known, right? Because I cared, like, I was still going out, like, I was still very much so just living life.
You become used to hiding it.
Yeah, you become, and I'm just like, oh, this is the perfect way to hide it, because
they're
never going to think that something's going on. All the meanwhile, like, in my mind, I'm like, I hate my life, and it took a lot, at least for me, and this is why I advocate for therapy. It took finding it took finding my therapist and working with her for a few years for me to realize, like, you know what, like, this has now become more about, like, maintenance, right? Like, this has become more of, like, me being able to, like, talk to somebody about how I'm feeling so I can, like, digest it, right? Like, so I can, like, really sit with it and be like, I didn't think about it that way. Or, wow, like, that makes sense. Oh, I'm bringing it up again, or, like, I'm deflecting, or, damn, was I the one gaslighting? Like, it just makes you realize, like, so much could be happening and you could be feeling so much. Other people think that by, like, not talking about their feelings, they're just, like, Superman, I guess, because you're just, like, a solid rock. But at the end of the day, you're going to have the demons that you have regardless. You know what I mean? And you're going to have to fight those battles regardless. So
eventually,
do you want to fight them alone, or do you want to fight them along somebody, or at least know how to process them so you can deliver it to somebody that may help you?
That's fire. Yeah.
So, yeah, Revive and Thrive definitely came from just this place in my heart that starts to feel like I'm ready to help people the way that I've been helped in a lot of situations. When I first decided to go into, like, mental health and have aspirations of being a therapist and just really and this is in recent years, like, it's not like a thought that I've always had, right? I've been interested in psychology for other reasons, right? But when I started realizing, like, how much it affected me, that's when it made me realize, like, oh my gosh, how many other people are feeling the way that I do, feeling like they're drowning in their own shit, and that I may be able to help, And so I kind of became the friend that was also, like, the friend therapist and just the person that everybody went to.
So you're a therapist in the making.
Yeah, I would like
to
yeah, I would like to call myself that, absolutely. But yeah, so I have a lot of plans for Revive and Thrive. It's still a baby, but my next if not by the end of the year, I want to have another event.
These events, if you don't mind me asking you, like, who puts them together? You put them together?
Yeah, I put the last one.
Holy
like, so
shit,
my first event definitely taught me a lot about how to host events, or just everything that goes behind, like, creating that. Of course, I had amazing help. Like, my mom helped me out. Like, she was in charge of, like, the light refreshments table, and
that's dope.
But the creation of, like, the workshops, like, those were my ideas, and then I reached out to people who I thought were people that I admire, if that makes sense, right? Like, I reached out to a lot of people that I admire, and I would ask them, like, hey, do you mind, I'm going to give you the idea and you put your spin on it.
That's so dope.
I need you to talk about confidence building. Dr. Joan, she has her own organization called Let Me Be Me, and she helps women with confidence building. Like, she does, like, I think her age range is, like, 35 and up. And I was like, this is the perfect person. So I just picked people who I thought were going to really deliver the message that I like had in mind. And we all worked beautifully. Like it was really an amazing turnout. And of course, it's going to be an annual thing. So Revive and Thrive is definitely going to have like a mental health retreat every year around mental health month. So mental health awareness month is May, and suicide prevention month is September.
That's fine.
Yeah. So right now, I will be joining my job at the suicide prevention walk in Hamilton, Veterans Park, September 30th. If you guys want to come
Fire.
out,
Write it down.
Yeah,
September
fire.
30th. Yeah. Um, so yeah.
So, with that, where do you see that in 5 years?
I would like, I would like for Revive and Thrive to have their retreat like at a location, like at a cabin.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? Like I want us to go away for the
Comfortable in
weekend.
nature.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want like aromatherapy there. I want yoga. I want meditation. I want everything holistic and alternative when it comes to solutions for mental health, right? Because all it is literally finding outlets,
Yeah.
right? The more active we are. So the more
Just
active
give
we
everybody
are,
a guitar.
Yeah.
right, like the more active we are, the better that like our diet, like if our diet changes, the more
Yeah.
activity that we have going on, like just a switch of lifestyle, I guess. You know, we live in this world right now that it's, you know, you're sitting at a computer for 8 hours a day,
Yeah.
depending on what your job is. And
True.
for the most part, people have, you know, office jobs. And I'm not knocking the people who have office jobs. But, you know, like life right now with social media and just like all the noise that we have
Yeah,
going
it's too much
on, you know, like
distractions.
people forget to cater to their mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Some things become so normal, and one of those things is like quieting how you feel about things. Now, don't get me wrong, I think like our generation has made beautiful strides to make it easier to talk about, I guess. The fact that we're sitting here
They're
even
opening
talking
the door
about,
more.
you know, mental
The whole
health, it
podcast,
yeah.
shows that, you know, it's going in a direction. But I really want to help people like dig into that. I'll share this. Like one of the dopest things that I experienced at my retreat was watching someone coming out of one of the workshops, and she was just like so taken with like emotion, and just
That's beautiful.
she stopped into the bathroom and she was like crying. So of course I go in and to check on her, and she's just telling me like super thankful of the whole experience, telling me how great the experience was and how she's really enjoying it because she's hasn't talked about her issues in such a long time, and she was struggling with her mental health. She was actually one of my students in a old gym that I used to work at. And you know, to see that, right, to see someone, even though she was, you know, like crying and things like that, and showing her emotions, to be so thankful of that whole experience, and to think like, wow, all the times that she would show up to my class, she was just so happy and smiling. And all the meanwhile, my class for her was therapy. Like that, in that moment, she told me, your class helped me a lot. I was in such a dark place. I didn't have any idea that she was going through anything.
You should be able to relate to that.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah.
I'm like,
Powerful.
wow,
That's
like
so dope.
this is what this retreat is doing.
Yeah.
You know, and so yeah, in 5 years, besides, you know, the cabin in the woods and that retreat, I want us to be a more established organization, right? Like I want to see numbers. I want to see like how many people we're reaching. I want people to like be able to say that Revive and Thrive helped them in some way. I don't even care about like them saying like Daniella helped me in a certain way. Like I'm not in the mental health field or anything like that for
fame.
for the fame or for like people to say like, you know, I'm gonna buy her book because she just, you know, knows what she's talking about, or I'm just gonna follow anything that she says because she knows what she's talking about, or because she's been there before. You know what I mean? Like, I want that whatever you get from me. Like,
So
one of the
you're
things.
dropping a book in 5 years. Is that what you just said? Mm-mm.
You heard it here
know.
first.
Exclusive.
But who knows? Maybe, you know, I've always played with the thought, but I just want people to know that, like, I'm really into this because I know how hard it is. That's all. There's really, like, not sprinkling nothing like extra
your
on
personal
it. Like,
experience drives
it's
you
my
to,
personal
yeah.
experience. Like, it sucks to,
And you
like,
absolutely seem like you overcame all of that, so you would know how to help people do the same.
yeah, it, cause I get it. Like, it sucks, like, not understanding how you feel, or like just being, or having your feelings kind of disable you in a way. Especially, like, I'm super envious. Well, I used to be super envious of people who could just, like, pick up and just, like,
Keep going,
you know, keep going. And I'd be like, yo, how the fuck are you doing that?
And that's why you didn't see the part behind that, though.
Right. And then I realized, like, when they finally sit down and talk to me, right? Because I've actually had this experience. When they finally sit down and talk to me, and we're talking, and they just, like, release everything that it is that was, like, on their shoulders. And in my head, I'm just like, wow. Like, I would have thought the complete difference. Like, here I am thinking, like, damn, I got to be more like this person because they don't let nothing phase them. And all the while, they was drowning in their own, you know, like, on their own, and not having outlets, and not knowing who to talk to. And again, in his culture and things that he had going on, it was such a taboo to even say that he was struggling mentally, you know? So yeah, I just want the conversation about mental health to be something that we talk about. Like, if it's like, oh yeah, I went to the doctors the other day. Oh yeah, I went to go see my therapist, and
That's fire.
shit's dope. And I started doing that by being an example. Like, so I'm very open about therapy, and I'm very open about, like, if someone asks me, like, you know, how did you find your therapist, or where do I go? I always use Headway. Headway is a really dope, like, search engine. I used it for one of my providers. You literally filter it out down to the point of, like, if you want him to be Hispanic, if you want him to be African American, if you want him to be young, old, like, you filter it down to, like, what you feel like is important to you. And then they give you the options, your insurance covers it, and then you're straight, and then you find someone, you know? Or even if it's not that, like, I always tell people, like, just one conversation, like, I am that person. I don't care. Like, my followers on Instagram, to all my followers on Instagram, I post a lot about mental health, right? And it's not just to post. Like, if I ever write, you know, if you need somebody to talk to, like, please hit me up, you know? Like, if you really, really need somebody to talk to, hit me up. Because I understand how scary it is when you're on the verge of feeling like you can't go anymore. You, like, that teetering feeling where you're like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I know that feeling. So when you feel like you can't go to your best friends, or you can't go to your parents, or, like, coworkers and things like that, sometimes strangers can help.
Yeah.
Strangers have helped me. Like, strangers have been there for me in times where I was just like, I don't want to go to people who I feel like are going to judge me. And they were there, you feel me? Because there's nothing that I can feel towards you. You know what I mean? When you're coming to me and really being like, I'm not okay, and I need to get this off my shoulders. So could you listen? Absolutely.
There's no judgment with a stranger.
There's no, because, you know, or at least with me. That's why I'm so, nah, if you really want to sit down and talk about your feelings, like, you could talk about your feelings with me, you know, like, and that's hard, because a lot of people be like, I hear that all the time, and then I start getting judged, or people start looking at me weird. I'm just like, listen, I can go about my life forever, right? Like, if I, you know, have done the things that I've done, or been in the places or positions that I've been in, I am no one to judge anybody. you know, and like God's shown me so much grace and so much love and so much understanding that I always, like, in my prayers, like, I always ask, like, use me in whatever way you feel like you need to use me, right? And so to know that my life, the direction of my life switched over to mental health, I feel like it's because it's my purpose. Like, now I understand it, that it's not a mistake that I want to work in mental health, because everything that, like, I believe, like, everything that I've been through, no fue por nada. Like, it wasn't in vain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, everything I've been through, it can't just be because, like, just cause.
Yeah.
You know, it was almost like, yeah, it sucked, but I feel like it prepared me. You know, and so, and that's, and you hear that in the name of the organization, you know, like, Revive and Thrive, like, you push forward.
It's
you know,
powerful.
you
Hell
bring
yeah.
consciousness to life, you know, like, I just got this tattoo done in April because it was like my 10-year anniversary from like the last time that I attempted, you know, suicide. So, and it says keep going, you know, and it's just like, I can't ever think that I never think about a depressive episode that I may go through or an anxiety attack with the same feeling of like, I hate my life.
That's
You know,
That's powerful.
I don't feel like that anymore.
Yeah.
So I know it's not a walk in the park. I will be the first one to tell you. You know what I mean? But it was almost it almost feels like a second chance, right? It almost feels like a second chance. So now when I know that there is unfortunately, the number of teens who are dying by suicide is crazy now because of social media. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
when I see those numbers, or when I see like the number of men who are committing suicide, right? Like, men have immense pressure when it comes to things like that. And then I just, you know, rewind the tape and I think about old me and I think about that moment, right? And then I think about where I'm at right now. And it's just like, I almost want to tell people like, yo, just hold on. Like, you gotta, like, just hold on a little bit longer, right? Like, and I advocate for suicide survivors too, and like even the families who are survivors of losing somebody, right? Like losing somebody by suicide. That's also not easy, because there's a lot of anger that comes after that, right? Because a lot of anger and a lot of guilt, right? Because you start to think like, well, why they couldn't just talk to me? Why couldn't they just, you know? But then I rear their mentality to, or the way that they're looking about it, I should say, for someone to want to just like leave everything behind, that pain has to be so much more bigger than the love that they have for their family. And that's not to say that they don't love their family. That's just a testament to how bad they're hurting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so now that I feel like I'm in such a different place, right? In such a peaceful place, as crazy as the storm may be right now, right? I don't ever think about like my bad days with that same thing of like, oh, I hate my life. Like, because a bad day does not mean a bad life. You know, so yeah, like I'm also very excited to see where Revive and Thrive goes. You know, I'm very much so like, I'm creating her as we go,
Yeah.
but wherever she decides to take off and like what it ends up being, I feel like it'll be because like God intended it to be that way.
With purpose.
Yeah.
I definitely want you to revive and thrive. Oh, you revived already.
Ray, I'm
and
thriving.
And you're thriving. Yeah, I want to see your movement flourish. So
Thank
more
you.
so
That
more
means
people
a
can.
lot to me.
No, for sure. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. However, I'm about to hit you with some rapid fire questions, and the first one will relate to that. Who do you see who is your dream collab or client?
Ooh, that's
It could be dead or alive. It doesn't matter.
Jordan B. Peterson.
What?
Jordan B. Peterson, if you're watching this, one
Why?
day we're gonna
Yes.
sit on the same couch, okay?
So how
Yeah.
come?
I've never said that I wanted to be like somebody, but if there's somebody who I really admire and I would love to get to the point of like just knowledge and understanding,
That's a
is
smart
is
man.
him.
Yeah.
Is him.
For
Yeah.
the people who don't know,
Fire.
who is this person?
Well, I know him from different podcasts, different lessons, and the messages that he spreads. So like that's how I came across him. I'm pretty sure he was like a professor at a university.
He's a
also in
clinical
the
psychologist.
Yeah.
He's he's Canadian, if I'm not
Canadian.
mistaken, and he has a lot of good. He's been on a lot of people's podcasts.
Yeah.
He was a professor, or I think he's still a professor. And he also just does tours where he speaks
Well,
to
I think they try to cancel like his license
to practice.
Yeah, because of the anti-woke movement, whatever it is
Yeah.
that's happening
Well,
online.
yeah, he is very controversial,
Oh.
so he's not everybody's cup of tea.
Bring it.
Yeah, he's not everybody's cup of tea, but he has helped me so much in like just opening my mind to a lot of things. I listen to him. If there's a podcast that I listen to, or it's not really a podcast because he doesn't have one, but any interview that he's been on,
He's on everyone's.
everyone.
If there's any content that you enjoy, is one where he's part.
Yeah,
he's part of it.
yeah.
That's
You
fire.
know what's funny about you bringing him up now that I think about it is that he is someone that does or went through the same thing that you mentioned, where he preaches a lot, but he himself went through all the trials and tribulations while he was preaching. So that's so crazy. You guys have that relatable understanding of that right
Yeah.
there.
I really admire that man.
He's
do.
good. Yeah.
Shout out to
Man,
him.
that's fire. That's fire. I'm glad to hear that. I like him a lot
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
You're like, this podcast, this episode got even better.
This just got
Keeps getting better. Yeah. Hit like, share, and subscribe if you feel like it. Okay. Favorite movie?
Beauty and the Beast
Cartoon or
Beauty and
live?
the Beast.
cartoon.
All right, yeah, we classical over here. We magical, we classical.
Yeah.
What did you like about that movie?
The whole, like, just the whole plot, like, the whole meaning behind the movie, like, there's beauty found within, you know what I mean? Like, loving somebody and, like, kind of maneuvering through, like, the facade, the things that are on the outside, you know, like, at the beginning, he was such an ass, you know what I mean? But, like, understanding why, right? Like, he got turned into a beast, and then here comes this beautiful girl, and she was so smart, and I feel like her a lot, you know what I mean? She's like very smart, into books and into learning, and she was very different than the rest of the girls from her town, you know? And yeah, she like the fact that she can see through the beast and loved him for like who he was and that kind of thing, like
See what
that,
you like about it.
yeah, like that's always been my thing. Like I have a friend who bought me the bracelet, like the Pandora bracelet, and it says like beauty lies within, you know, true beauty lies within, and I that resonates a lot with me. I feel like that's very, very important. Yeah. And they did it so beautifully for that that movie.
Yeah.
You know.
That even a kid can understand. It's engineered
Yeah.
for kids. Yeah, you're right. That's good. Favorite series?
That's hard. Does it have to be my favorite? What if I don't have a favorite?
Just, yeah,
One that
top,
you
so
connect
one that,
with,
that
or
you
that
Okay,
enjoyed.
so I'll name this one because I just finished watching it. Jane the Virgin.
I didn't finish it, but I've enjoyed a couple episodes.
I didn't watch it.
I've watched it
my
3
girl
times.
did. And
I've
Thank
watched
God
it
it's
3
not the
times.
favorite.
yeah, I thought she said she had favorites.
You just made it seem
Yeah.
like, nothing's been captivating enough.
Yeah, no, I love Jane the Virgin. I think it's so funny. It's so
like the
funny.
whole premise and everything.
Yeah, and it's just like the magic realism, like things like singing back at you and the just over dramatizing certain things. Like, yeah, I think it's it's really
beautiful.
funny.
It gets the point across.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Okay. Favorite book.
Favorite book? You know, Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud.
Well, we'll throw that in the description.
Gotta
That's
check
gonna
that
be
out.
that's gonna go
Yeah.
on my list.
And I'll say that one because it's been one of the ones that was the most life changing in recent years.
Okay.
It's like really helped me like understand like what I've been doing with my boundaries, my lack of boundaries, I should say.
That's fire. All right, I'm gonna add that to my list, and I'll give you my feedback in volume 2.
Yep.
We expect to hear
absolutely.
again. Okay, favorite quote.
Ooh, I have a lot. So I guess the one that I just always keep in the back of my mind is like, what's for you will always be for you.
That's fire.
Yeah.
Like
Like
that.
what's
That's our when somebody says bars. That's our bars. Bar.
yeah, like what's for you will always be for you. It doesn't matter.
That's
you
fire.
know.
What's meant to be.
Yeah,
it's meant
what's
to be.
meant to be will be.
Trust the powers that be.
Yep.
Look at the camera and tell the people where to reach you.
So you can reach me at D Fitness Way. No, it's D period Fitness Way and Revive Thrive Collective.
We'll have those down in the description for you below. Daniela, this has been a treat. I, for one, can say, I know you're watching, baby. Me and my lady are going to chew it up. We're going to go back and forth. She's going to say, oh, my gosh, she said this, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to resonate with her. I can only imagine the amount of people who are going to do the same thing. It has been wonderful having you here. It's my first time meeting you, but you've left a lasting impression that when I see you in volume, or when we see you in volume 2, when you come back and we do the progress check,
Absolutely.
I can only imagine how more things you have for us. So with that, do you have something else, Brother Man?
I'm good.
Do you have something?
No, I'm good. Thank you so much, guys, for having me.
Thank you for being
coming
here
through.
with us.
Absolutely.
As always, peace and love. We out! Peace and love. We out!
They still throwing dirt up on my name. I just want the money, fuck the fame.